Professionally, I'm a coach. I work as a leadership coach and a coach for queer folks and most often for gay men. My work with organizations is related to co-creation, conflict, inclusion, belonging. My work with individuals is really about helping people connect to joy, community, and care
Mm.
so they can move from where they are to their next act. So I often work with people who say, I've done this career for 15 years, and if I'm doing it in 15 years, then I'm going to be very unhappy.
Mm.
Or I've been stuck in this toxic relationship with my boss for 2 years and I don't know how to get out.
Mm.
Or I don't know where my people are. I feel lonely all the time. So those are some of the kinds of people that I work with in my independent.
Mm. All things that people can relate to.
I go on the internet and talk about doing the things that bring you joy every day. And had a conversation the other day with my husband where I was like, I just feel so depleted. And he was like, so what do you tell your clients and everybody else on the internet about what to do when that happens? And I was like, oh, yeah, fair enough. Let me go watch some of my videos.
And we had connected several months ago over Instagram because I just enjoyed your reels and they're so well done. And you're local, you're very close to where I live, and I just really had enjoyed. We've had two coffees
Yeah.
and love your presence. And I have to tell you, I your reels are so fun because they're so practical and they make me want to explore because you're always like talking about places in the city and places to go and ways that you do, and it's very encouraging and very healing. And I know that the last time we spoke, we were talking about some of the things that you have been doing that had you not had these kinds of practices, you might be in another state of mind or in another place emotionally, where others have been, triggered by just the environment that we find ourselves in and just kind of being pulled under. And then, which I think you had said had created a level of type of conflict or a type of disagreement that has kind of been wearing, but you had these practices in place that kind of buoyed you up. And can you talk more about that? Because I think that's so foundational to your work and also like what we need. And it kind of got me excited because I've been a little bit on hiatus with my show. And I'm like, we're going to set this date and we need to have you talk about this because this is so key.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful to be with you in returning to creating. I've loved seeing what you've created before. So thanks for inviting me into that. Um, and to answer your question, so here's the straightforward answer, and then I would love to offer a couple of, so what's the why behind this, or how did I get this idea? So for the last 100 days or so, I have been posting on Instagram every day a reel with the theme of queer joy in mind.
Hmm.
And some days I am cranky and I think, oh God, why did I commit to doing this? So just to like allay any thoughts that I'm like floating on a cloud over here and it's never hard. But I have been consistent every day for the last 100 days or so with posting a reel or some photos or whatever, or even reposting something else that brought me joy that has a queer element to it. And I began the practice with the intent of trying to grow a social media presence so that I could connect with people who might be um, likely clients who would be interested in the kind of work that I do.
Hmm.
And probably about day 25 or so, I sort of lost interest in that purpose. And I realized that what was happening was I was having the joy of connecting with queer people.
Mm.
And I was having the joy of people reaching out and saying, I've been feeling really isolated. Thanks for what you're doing. Or
Um,
people saying like, "Hey, I just had a relationship that came to an end and I'm in a really hard place and this is really helpful." Or I had
mm.
a friend from the neighborhood say like, "Oh my God, you're like the you're like the social media from the before times where people did happy things.
Yeah.
So, and I've been more than just posting. What I've been trying to do is every person that connects with me, I've been reaching out to them. And I think people must think I'm insane because I'll say, "Hey, I'm so glad you followed me. How's your week going?" And some people are like, "Yeah, no, thank you, crazy person." And other people are like, "Oh, it's been pretty good. Thank you for asking me. Like, what's going on with you?" And like, there have been a number of people, including you, where I've developed either a connection online or like I'm grateful in your case that we've developed a coffee connection and now a Zoom connection
Hmm.
so far offline.
Yep.
So there is just a way that that practice of I'm gonna just put joy out into the world is has really been something that has helped me buoy my spirits during these challenging times in
Hmm.
which I'm fairly certain without this practice I would be in much worse shape.
Yeah.
Which is not to say, like, oh, I've just tuned out the news and I'm just floating on a cloud and isn't everything wonderful? Like, I'm deeply connected as
Yeah.
a queer person in deep, intimate relationship with immigrants and um, children of immigrants. That, like, that's
Mm-hmm.
mostly who makes up my chosen family. Like, these are not good times. And
Right.
also, you got to have your hands full of both the reality and the possibility is what I'm learning.
Ah,
Yes.
yeah. Holding on to both. There's a tension in that.
Yeah.
Being able to keep that because the tendency, I think, is to swing to one side or the other, one extreme or the other. And it's being able to have and live in that balance or in that tension between what you just described. It's a really hard thing, and it's something that I've been exploring for quite a while over the last several months for sure to figure out kind of what this means for me and being able to notice everything that's around and not be pulled under by it. Somehow being able to practice a certain degree of I guess it's gonna sound strange, but gentleness and compassion and care, but also having my own kind of internal boundaries that I'm not swept up by things because it can very easily happen for me to get pulled into either anger, rage, severe depression, extreme anxiety, all to just kind of like as a means of coping, but being able to like have that strike that center place where you're at least you're acknowledging the tension. It's not like those things don't exist. And that, like you said, your head's not up in the clouds, you're not in a bubble, you have crabby days and all of that. But it's being able to have that acknowledgement of what is going on in the world, acknowledgement of what's going on in you, and being able to find a way through it and to kind of reconcile it. And I think we talked about this last time that we are not our feelings about things. The feelings that we feel aren't who we are. They're not our identity. You know, we're so much more richer and deeper, more authentic than that. And when what's kind of created um, apprehension or dismay in me is when I see people equating their feelings to who they are and their identity. And it's so hard to connect with someone who's living in that place. And for me personally, it's created a lot of more, it's increased my feeling of loneliness where I can't find a connection to bridge with somebody because I don't like that is really hard for me to identify with, and it's it's off-putting. Uh, I think someone had described it to me a while back that anger is like a distancing emotion. It just is meant to create walls. It's meant to put a solid boundary in place, but it's something that pushes people away, and I think it's just feeding more isolation, more loneliness, more fear and more like of what we don't need and what we don't, I think in this time we need to have some good strategies. We need to have tactics to kind of navigate that tension to not like be one extreme or the other, but find a way to be level-headed through it and to express a form of leadership in the community and among ourselves as well. And not only among ourselves, but also in ourselves. Like, how am I going to carry myself through this without exploding?
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many places we could go. You've got me really excited about this conversation. But one of them is during the pandemic, my husband worked for IKEA. And um, several months into the pandemic, he said, the public has changed, right? Like
The what?
the public has changed. The job
Mm,
of working with the people coming into the store has changed. People have so much anxiety
mm,
about being safe in a public space, and that anxiety puts fear and rage right at the surface. And so what he was experiencing was that people are extremely rude. People would snap to anger like that. And
yeah.
I bring that up because I think we're in another time where there has been a big shift, right? Like you don't you can hide under the covers if you want. But when US citizens are being deported, when you go to the grocery store and you see the price of things and you recognize that every economic expert that exists says tariffs are a terrible idea, and yet we're still talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear news stories about disruptions in supply chains, and
Mm-hmm.
you hear about clinics being attacked. Um, Everything around us makes fear or anxiety and anger and nervous system dysregulation more generally, I think, just a natural consequence. And what I notice in the clients that I work with is just a lot more nervous system dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
Fight, flight, freeze, appease, dissociate. And people are having a harder time connecting with themselves and one another just generally. And then as gay men, as queer folks, my experience is we're not so great at connecting with one another in the first place, right?
Right.
Like our shame and our fear and our culture make it such that um, many gay men have surface relationships with one another
Mm-hmm.
that don't go deeper.
Yeah.
Um, Let me say that's a generalization. I have many relationships with gay men that really matter to me,
Mm-hmm.
that are deeper. I don't tend to be a person that has a lot of surface relationships.
Yeah.
But you're speaking to your isolation. Um, I feel that too. Sorry to hear about it. And I think neither of us is alone. In fact, last month I put out a newsletter that was on the theme of how to build community. And
Mm.
pretty quickly I got a reply back from a friend who's a coach, and he said, every single friend, client, and colleague I'm working with is struggling with co-creating community right now.
With what community?
With co-creating community.
Co-creating.
Yeah.
What is the struggle or what is the context or the different scenarios for that?
Well,
With the
I think he works with a wide variety of people, as do I, and including a lot of queer people. And I think he was just noticing the same thing I am, which is if our nervous systems are dysregulated, if we're on guard, right, we're in this fight, flight, freeze, appease, dissociate
hmm
feeling, it's pretty hard to, without intention, it's pretty hard to build relationships and stay
yeah,
connected.
yeah, it's hard. Yeah, this has definitely been an area of struggle for me. And I have a handful of people in my life that I would say are relatively close that I have connections with, that I can call and talk to on the phone and, all of that. And the one thing, sometimes I wonder, because when you're in a small, tight community, and I would say this is probably a somewhat small, tight community because it's a neighborhood, you see people and you just, you see them relatively often, at the store or at the gym or walking around or sidewalks or whatever gatherings. And I've noticed I pay attention to certain things, kind of what people do, and mainly because I'm curious about it for myself because I know it really bothers me. And there is like this sometimes I get the feeling, and I don't know what it is, and it kind of really bothered me to even admit it, but I feel like sometimes certain guys look down their nose at me. And it's a weird feeling. And I'm like, is that really real? Did that really happen? Are they just giving me that look? That that kind of feeling of judgment, or I don't know what it is, but and I see it a lot of times when there's like a pack that's walking down the sidewalk. And or I just will like I encountered it the other day. I was walking my dog and there were two guys walking their dog, and I smiled at the one, the other one smiled at me, and then the other one just kind of looked at me. And it was like this looking down. Of course, it didn't help that he was taller than me, but he was just like looking at me, and it was kind of like a thing that bothered me. And I remembered kind of thinking about it later on. Why does this bother me so much? And it reminded me of when I was a child, or not even a child, but like maybe a teenager of sorts or growing up. My mom and I growing up in kind of a wealthier area of the in the suburbs. And if we would go to places that would be like, malls and things like that. And that feeling of being looked at and evaluated and judged by people that consider themselves better than you. And I also experienced it in school too, because the kids were a lot more well off than me and my mom were. And I'm like, where does this come from? And it's hard for me to wrap my head around thinking that it's to do with insecurity, but I'm wondering if it is, or it's something that it creates like this. I don't know. Let's talk about it. I'm sure you have some thoughts. Because it affects community, affects the ability to make connections, to let your guard down, to be okay and breathe and just invite, there's nothing wrong with smiling and saying hello to people. Why is that such an issue?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first to say thanks for being vulnerable with me and with the people who are listening. I've been there too. And I'm resisting every inch of coachness in my body to not immediately say, wow, what a great topic for a coaching session. Let's unpack what's going on there.
That's okay. The
Um,
last guy I interviewed was a therapist, and found myself into a therapy session in a way.
yeah, well, I'll say this. If we were working together in coaching, I think where my curiosity would be is to unpack um, with you, like, what did it feel like? What were the thoughts in your mind? Like, you had a moment where you were walking your dog, you smiled at one person, and the other person you smiled at kind of gave you a look that
Hmm.
you interpreted as dismissive. So,
Yeah.
as a gay man, I know that look.
Mm.
Um, I'm not dismissing what your interpretation is. And one of the places we might go in coaching is, okay, so let's unpack that, right? Like uh, when I work with teams, we often talk about the ladder of inference, which is a tool for trying to understand like how do we come to the conclusions about things that we come to. So there is a moment on that ladder of inference where you could say, well, maybe he had a really bad day. Maybe he was extremely constipated. Maybe he was really worried about something happening at work.
Hmm.
Um, so then it gets interesting, right? Because then we can talk about like, okay, well, among the possible interpretations, this is the one you landed on. What do you think that's about?
Mm. I would say for me personally, it would be about feeling inferior and being judged for sure. Like maybe my appearance or the way I looked or my hair or something like that, some kind of exterior thing that was being judged on or like I don't know. I know that's probably what it was.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because I I got it a lot when I was growing up. Like that was definitely something that I continue to have to deal with and grapple with. It's this like putting down or this looking at someone in a way to make sure that you know they know that they're better or that they know that they have the power in the situation or that they come from somewhere that's much better than you or they have some kind of external thing. And so I think about that and it's probably it all goes back to like earlier years, and growing up and informative years and things like that. Um, and this discussion makes me think about how this plays out as well, because I know that you talked about, there's a thing that I've grappled with as well. Is like, am I doing enough? Am I am I doing the right things, in this environment? Am I believing the right things? Do I have the right positions? Am I voicing them loud enough for everyone's approval to show that I am on you know, I don't know how to say it. Like, you know what I'm talking about. It's like having when people get, I guess I hate the word, but like getting canceled or they get put into a category, that same kind of sizing up, I think happens. Even it's kind of relevant to how even on a different kind of type of level that has nothing to do with someone walking their dog by you, but has to do with like, are you enough of something to make sure that you are doing all the right things and you're towing the line? Because there's this part of me too that I've grappled with too, like, well, I've like really I do toe my own line, but like, excuse me, mister, like I'm really lonely here and I feel like there's nothing that you've done to make me feel welcome. So like why do you care? I feel that sometimes and I feel that kind of like triggered point where it's like why do I feel like I need to even align with you because you're kind of mean? So,
Yeah. What comes up for me as I'm listening to you is years ago, I did a lot of my own healing in this world by sitting in circles. Um, and one circle I sat in over a course of a year was with a group of folks at a Quaker retreat center outside Philadelphia. And we went, I think it was 4 times for a week. And then in between, we had opportunities to communicate with different people. And um, I did a lot of journaling that year. And I was speaking with a journal partner, Jean. And I remember because I was sitting in my car and I was looking out at Lake Michigan. And I don't know how long, maybe this is 15 years ago. I said, Jean, I have a wound related to belonging. And I
mm,
have no idea what it's about. And now I have a pretty good idea what that's about. And for me, part of it was growing up as a gay kid. Part of it was growing up as a fat kid.
mm,
Part of it was like I was telling a friend a story the other day about moving from a rural town into a small city where everybody had a lot of money. And I remembered it. We weren't poor. Like, don't take that away from the story, but we were doing well and moved into a place where everybody else's parents were doctors and lawyers and had like
mm,
very high earning.
mhm.
And so I grew up in Vermont. Everybody had these really fancy ski jackets.
Oh,
I didn't ski. But I begged my parents, oh, I want this kind of ski jacket. And
did they
I
have
think
the
my mom
tag
was
on it?
like, what's that?
Did they have the tag?
Yes. And your status was known based on which ski resort the tag was from.
Yeah.
I begged for it. So like there are just all these elements of my identity that like always made me feel like I didn't belong.
Hmm.
And I've been on a journey about that. And most recently, I would say like over the last 8 years, a big part of the journey has been that my partner in the work I do with organizations at Social Identity Coaching Lab, her name is Mona Khan, and she is a third culture kid.
Mm.
She grew up someplace different from where she was born, which is different from where she lived. Her current passport is not the nationality she grew up with.
Hmm.
So she always grew up experiencing difference. And it actually helped me make sense of my own experience in a way, even though I grew up in a fairly homogenous place. In a place that was so homogenous, I was the outsider, which is someone with all the privilege I carry is sort of a weird thing.
Hmm.
But I say that to say what I have learned in relationship with her and then with hundreds of clients and organizations is the more we accept our weirdness and our oddness, and the more I become and accept and love the very particularly weird person that I am, the more people seem to be coming to relationship with me who
Hmm.
are also weird in their own particular ways and who say like, "Oh, I thought I was the only one." So in the past, I was trying to fit in.
Hmm.
And now I think I would say I have found a way to belong, feel a sense of belonging to myself.
Mm.
And that has made all the difference for me.
I'm reading this book that is actually, and the chapter of this book is actually talking about the same thing about acknowledging being that part that, like and owning that you're different or owning that you have this personality quirk or owning, there's this thing that you're interested in that just no one else seems to be interested in. Like for me, it's like my identity or the thing I've struggled too with is like, why are you doing this? Okay, Greg, what is this? Like, people think you're weird. How dumb is this? And I find myself going through this. And my therapist the other day asked me like what my endpoint was or where this came from or whatever. And I gave like all the kind of answers about like, people I want to reach and stuff like that. But like, what was it for me? And I said, essentially it's like, definitely creative expression, being able to like have these ideas and things that I put out there. But it's also a healing journey for me to share, to learn the things, to be up on camera, to write things that are maybe it might be uncomfortable for me sometimes, or they're just acknowledgments of who I am on this journey and being able to have at the end of the day, like a story for myself that's, it's helped me. Because in the end, like this particular thing that I've wrestled with myself, this identity or this difference or what this quirkiness about me is something I know that everyone on some level deals with, especially, growing up gay, um, dealing with all kinds of people that judge you based on, who you are or who you are not and what you look like. And even, honestly, even in within the community, it's a struggle too, because are you butch enough? Do you have a masculine demeanor? Are you soft spoken? Do you have like a high pitched voice? Do you sound like a girl? Like these are all the things, that men really kind of grapple with on one side or the other, because it could also, you could be someone that's got a masculine demeanor, and who does that person that's coming to you say about you? There's like a struggle too. Like, do I accept myself and who I am to let this other person come into my life and not have it mean something about me, but actually it's just something that like brings us together, that we can rely on one another and stuff. So it's kind of been an interesting journey and yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what have you learned about belonging in the process?
Mm. Belonging for me has been really linked with self-acceptance, because the more that I find that I accept who I am, all all of it, even the bad days and the days that I don't really feel good about myself, all of it, as long as I accept myself and if I have a degree of that, I feel like I belong. And then on those days, because sometimes they're just days, they're not like even weeks. Sometimes I
Mhm.
can feel them for weeks, and sometimes I can feel it for months. But on those moments when I do accept myself, I don't feel alone. I mean, I don't feel lonely. I feel complete and I feel like I'm a part of something. And I think that has been what I've learned. But then also, there's like a sense of fullness that comes. And I didn't just learn this on this recent journey, but even when I invited people into my home, it's like taking steps forward to invite people in to my humble abode where not everything's like picture perfect or whatever, and making a meal for them and having conversation with them. It created like a sense of like fullness in me that I'm like, oh, I created this thing. And it's something that I've brought people into. And even things like this, having a chat with you. It's something that I put out there and I created and I invited people in. And every time I do that, and I think now something I'm having my own little aha moment, like going to social media, going to like Instagram or Threads or whatever. I've had like this hesitation for a while to want to engage because I have evaluated whether or not that I'm worthy to engage, that I have something to offer to the table and I keep stopping myself from doing it. I dance around the edges of it and I'm like, I don't think that I'm presentable today. I don't think I really want to have that conversation or create that thing. But if history serves me, when I do that, when I do invite people in, or at least have something out there, it does create a point of connection where whoever can find that and react to it and, engage with it or whatever. And it creates something that wasn't there before. And I think that ability to create something that wasn't there before becomes you do it all the time with your reels, your commitment to doing them. You create something, you create a space, you create like this place, whether it's like a restaurant that you're trying out or that spa place that you went to, those different things. You create a space that you bring it, you create it, you show it to people, and then people can respond to it, and then they can find a connection to you through it. But if you hadn't done that, if you hadn't created those spaces, then there's a void that's there and people can't find it and they're kind of stuck in a place of not knowing what that is. So it's a
Yeah.
long answer to your question.
A beautiful answer to the question. I mean, you're making me one, thank you for saying that about the reels. I would invite you. I'm feeling shame in my cheeks as I offer this. Really scroll down in my Instagram
Hmm.
and find the stuff that I made 2 years ago. And you will
Oh,
see someone trying to put on perfection.
okay.
I'm a coach. I'm supposed to have the answers. I'm supposed to have it together. I'm going to come on and I'm going to tell people what I know as a coach.
Hmm.
No. Like, I talk about queer joy because I need to connect to queer joy. And
Yeah.
I talk about queer community not because I have it all figured out or that I don't ever feel lonely, but because I want to keep creating queer community.
Hmm.
And I talk about self-care because there are weeks where I worked too hard and I need to take care of myself. And so I'm just putting out there kind of what my imperfect self. And it's a lot more fun and a lot more resonant than when I was putting out, like, okay, here's the mask of Peter the coach that I want you to see. Um, like it wasn't any fun to make that content. Like this content is super fun. Like, yeah, so I'm a large-bodied person who is queer, and I went to a Korean spot where everybody has to hang out naked in the wet area. And it turns out somewhere along the way I lost my body shame, so that part doesn't even bother me.
Hmm.
It's fun to take up space in that. Like that is one particular weird, odd way, like just using one of the examples you gave that I took up space.
Mm.
But also, like you're making me think about, especially in the work I've done in organizations, do a lot of work about like how to get teams to be able to co-create things together that they couldn't do alone.
Hmm.
And if everybody is hiding behind a mask, and in professional environments, I've heard things like, my boss is so competent. I don't want her to see that I struggle,
Hmm.
right? Or I don't know how to do that, or I do that differently, or I think differently, and I'm worried people are going to judge me.
Mm,
Like it kind of boils down to the same human need to be able to just be who we are and think who we are and offer what we have from that place.
yeah.
And organizations, just like our gay community, are not always hospitable
No.
for showing up as we are.
Yeah, because there's this. I have different theories, but sometimes I think when we do show up that way, ironically, it may make someone feel like, oh, I'm like that, but I don't want to admit it, or I feel uncomfortable with that because I need to have it together, and it creates like this different kind of tension.
Yep.
And yeah, I really like that. I'm trying to break out of this. I'm pushing myself out of this nest that I found myself in. I don't know if it's a nest or what you would call it, but cave or hole. Um, to let that part. It's so interesting because it takes a while for me to get into that like authentic place. It's much easier, obviously, when I'm talking with someone like you on a camera, but like when it's by myself, you know, it's a real struggle to be authentic without sounding like you're trying to be somebody else. And
Yeah.
it's such, oh my, such a struggle. And that's why some of those imperfect um, recordings are probably the best. We have all these spontaneous things. It's so funny because like years ago, I used to do Facebook Lives and I didn't have, I just would talk about different things. And I recently went back to look at them. I'm like, oh my God, talk about cringe. Like, look at your hair. Oh, that's so embarrassing. It's so funny. Like, I'm like, because I remember at the time I did them, I remember being scared, but I never had such a reaction to like looking back. I'm like, I did them and I did quite a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Self-judgment is, yeah, that's a journey. I've
Yes,
been on it
it's
and
certainly
I'm on it too.
a
I used to get this feeling of like I would set up the camera to make a video and I would just, my whole body would get tense.
Mhm.
And I'd be trying to talk about something and um like I would get it wrong and I could like if you watch the unedited versions of those early videos, you'd see me going like, "Ah!" Like it was painful. Like can't you like so much self-judgment and self-judgment like in my day-to-day life, thank God with all the work I've done is not a place I live
Mm,
any longer.
mhm.
It's like a place I visit sometimes and say, oh, yeah. Okay, I recognize this torture. I didn't like really like this town when we lived here. Um, but those early days of trying to put myself on camera definitely evoked
Mhm.
that most judgmental part of myself.
So, Peter, how can people find you?
Simplest answer is at Great Bear Coach on Instagram. I love interacting, so if you send me a DM, I'm certain to reply. There's also a link from my Instagram to my website, which is greatbearcoaching.com. And I'm in a few other places, but those are the two easiest ways to find me.
Nice. Well, thank you, Peter.
Thank you. This is
A
really
really,
fun to be with you, David.
yeah, absolutely, 100%.